Hey y'all, and welcome to my channel. I'm Michael Shane. Today I wanted to talk about betta tanks. So, betta tanks. What's so important about the tank for a betta fish? Don't they live in little cups? They shouldn't live in little cups. A betta fish does require a good amount of water, and most people think of a betta fish tank and they kind of think something like this. So this is a betta tank. It's called the Betta View, I believe, and it's half a gallon of water. As you can see, it's very small, and there's not much room for anything. That little, dollar plant takes up half the tank. Then there's gravel taking up more of the water space. So really, when you get down to it, this is about an eighth of a tank. And the only good part about this entire tank is that it did at least come with a lid, so they can't jump out when they're very unhappy, which they do. So what is an appropriate tank size? Well, the very absolute bare bones minimum tank size would be 2.5 gallons. I have one 2.5 gallon tank, and it is definitely my least favorite. When I first set it up, I actually enjoyed the way it looked until about a week ago I realized that I cannot get the nitrogen cycle in this tank to work properly. And that's simply because it's just so small that it will never actually cycle, leading into a pretty nasty breakout of brown algae. So now I have to sit here and clean her ornaments all the time, and then I have my larger tanks, which you would think would be more work. In the long run, turned out to be the easiest thing of my life. All I have to do is change their water a little bit, and I'm good to go. So do I recommend getting the 2.5 gallon tank? No. No, I don't. I would recommend a minimum of 5 gallons, but I actually prefer to keep them in 6 gallons and above. My first male betta fish actually lives in a 10 gallon tank now, and I had moved him from a 6 gallon, and he definitely shows more improvement in the 10 gallon than he did in the 6, but that could also be due to the tank shapes. So getting into tank shapes, now that you have at least 2.5 gallons of water, what shape tank is available to you? My 2.5 gallon is a bow front tank by Topfin, and it works out fine. It's an alright shape because it's mostly rectangular. It's just that the front comes out in kind of a circle, giving it a little more, I guess, high-def look. It does look quite nice, but in the long run, I think I would have just rather go with a small, square tank. But unfortunately, I only had this option, so I went with this for the little betta fry, and it does work out, so this is fine. There are also hex tanks and semi-hex tanks. I do have one semi-hex tank, and some of the issues I've discovered with it are just that it's harder to heat. It's a little more difficult to keep clean, honestly, but it is manageable. I've never had algae breakouts in it or anything like that, so it's manageable, given the right filter on there. And then, of course, your standard rectangular tank is my favorite. I just use those, and they work out great. I've had no issues, really, with any of them, except for slight algae in one, and it's as simple as wiping off the filter every once in a while, and it's good to go. So, the rectangular tanks, though they're my favorite, I do know some people who like the circular tanks, or the, it's like a half circle. They like those, the crescent tanks, and those would be fine too, given you have the proper amount of water for the fish, as well as having enough surface space for the fish to breathe, because bettas do come to the surface to breathe. Now that you've chosen your tank shape and size, what's next? Well, given that you've chosen the proper tank shape or size, what else do you need? Well, you're going to need to go ahead and get your filter if it doesn't come with your tank that you've purchased. And if a filter does come with the tank that you've purchased, be pretty aware of the amount of flow that that filter puts out. I actually had one when I first got one of my tanks that acted more as a power head than a filter itself. I personally prefer having the Tetra Whisper filters. They are extremely quiet. They work pretty well. And just overall, I have, I believe, 4 of them in this room right now, and I don't hear anything. Some people do prefer to use sponge filters or more top-of-the-line marine land filters, things like that. I don't mind the Whisper filters, they work just fine for me. And I like the ones with the biomedia in the front so that I can just throw the cartridge away, put something new in there, and my bacteria is still there. I didn't throw it away with the cartridge. Next, you're going to need to get your heater. Now, a heater can cost a little bit of money depending on what you get. I like the ones with the built-in thermostat, but that's not all the ones I use. I also have a couple of just preset cylinder ones, and those are fine as well. They go up to 78 degrees and generally hold the temperature very well. And the presets, they're fine. They cost a little less. They're like, I want to say, $10 to $15 on the shelf. It's not that bad, easily affordable. Whereas the thermostat type can run 30 to 40 bucks, some of them 80 to $100. So you just need to be aware of what tank size you have as well as what size heater you need. Now that you have a low flow filter and a heater on your tank, next up would just be decorating the tank. So that's going to be kind of personal preference, and I might do a video on decorating tanks later on, but right now I just wanted to get that tank information out, as so many people seem to think that you can keep a betta fish in a small cup or in a vase and this is going to be fine. And unfortunately it's not. That is not okay. You really need to be aware of what you're doing to those fish when you put them in that situation, and being aware of how often you're going to have to do water changes for the amount of water in your tank. A 2.5 gallon tank already needs water changes once to twice a week, whereas sometimes on my larger tanks, I can test them and they'll hold out for longer than that. I generally do a once a week change anyway on all of my tanks, but the 2.5 gallon does require more water changes to keep it straight. So now that we've finished talking about the tanks, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of show you my 2.5 gallon tank, my 5, and then I'll move you up to my 10. I do have a 20 gallon and a 6.5 gallon, so I can just kind of walk through each of my tanks and let you know which one's which. And of course you're going to see issues with each tank, but that's everybody who has fish tanks. There's always an issue, and it comes with the sizes, the filtration, and things like that, as well as how long a tank has been set. So first we have the tank that I'm having the biggest issue with, my 2.5 gallon little top fin tank. As you can see, I do have some brown algae in here I need to get cleaned out. And this is my little betta fish, who is a juvenile. As you can see, that's why you need a lid. She's a very good jumper there. But this is just a top fin tank, and I'm considering pretty much getting rid of this one, as it does just, it's really poor at cycling. This tank just does not cycle properly, but this is a 2.5 gallon tank, so I kind of expected that. She is, of course, just a little juvenile fish. And there's why you need your lid on your tank. They will jump out. So next up is actually my 10 gallon, as it just sits next to the little one. I'm sorry about the thermostat sitting in the middle of the tank. It tried to float away. My male betta fish likes to play with it. I don't know why. But this is Wilson's tank. He is my original betta, and he has moved up all the way to this 10 gallon by himself with his little buddy here. His friend is in here. There is Philippe right there. He's in a mono shrimp that lives in here. I haven't had no issues with this 10 gallon at all. No algae, no ammonia issues. It cycled quite quickly, and just everything worked out very well in here. So next over here by my gecko is actually, this is Aneja's tank. She is a small female betta fish, and she lives in a 5 gallon tank. As you can see, the algae issue spreads to her filter, but not much else. So her tank also cycled pretty well. She is one of my more feisty fish. It's hard to keep up with her a little bit. But she lives in here by herself. So no cleanup crew in this tank. Moving over here, this is a 20 gallon tank. As you can see, the decorations kind of get more and more dense the higher up that gallon gets. So the higher the gallon, the more decoration, the more theme you can give your tank, and of course the more fish you can have in your tank. They are all 5 here. I have had actually no algae issue in here at all, and this is my highest stocked tank. So the larger the tank, the less issue I've been having. And this tank does have 5 females in it. I am planning to get them a little cleanup crew to throw in there as they're messy eaters. But besides that, this tank has no issue. And then over here is my newest betta fish, Gibbs. He lives in the semi-hex tank, which is 6.5 gallons of water, which is kind of a strange number. But I don't mind that. He's newer, like I said, so he does have a little bit of a fin issue that we're working out. And this tank I've had set up for, I want to say at least 6 months now, and I haven't had any algae issues with this tank either. And I keep just that small little air-driven filter in here, and there's been no trouble with it. And now that Gibbs is in it instead of Wilson, the same thing, there's just no issue, and he's absolutely fine. And this was just an emergency tank originally. So as you can see, each tank has its own benefits and disadvantages. But if I had to choose my favorite tank out of all of the ones that I own, it would definitely be Wilson's 10 gallon. I love the way I was able to decorate it and have it pretty much fully scaped, as well as giving his shrimp enough room to kind of hide and play in as well. With the issues going on with some of the smaller tanks, I am considering moving everyone up to something over 6 gallons, as once I hit that 6 gallon mark, just all issues go away. The tanks cycle very well, and nothing seems to affect them the way it affects the smaller tanks. It is also harder to regulate temperature in the smaller tanks, giving that algae something to latch onto. It can kind of regulate how it wants to grow in those lower temperatures, so automatically the smaller tanks are kind of falling victim to that. But besides that, if you have any questions or concerns about your tanks and you just want to know my thoughts, just message me on my social media and I'll be sure to get back to you. Don't forget to hit the subscription button and the little notification bell. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again next time.